right now we're going to change, and this time we're going to be talking about what people have had questions about, and that is making an image backup. And that is a backup of the complete computer at a point in time that you can use to restore. And today we're welcoming a first timer who's not been a first timer to our Wednesday workshops. Many of you have heard Steve share questions and comments, but he finally took the request for Judy saying, hey, we just need some people to share what they know, and with those of us who don't know. So Steve is here today. He's a member of the board of directors for the Personal Computer Club of Toronto, serving as a webmaster. He's a member of PCCT's experts panel and an executive board member and hardware SIG leader for the Mississauga Computer Club. The Mississauga, how's that? His technical career includes computer-aided design, 3D modeler, digital imaging, and technical illustrator, system manager, computer consultant, and computer gaming graphics designer. Today, he's going to share with us how to use the program Macrium Reflect. So Steve, welcome to the panel, and we look forward to learning about this particular program.
Okay, thanks. It's pronounced Mississauga.
Thank you.
Okay. And what I want to do first is I've got a video that Leo Notenboom from Ask Leo did a fairly good job on the Macrium free version. So I thought I'd start off with that rather than just try and reiterate what he's already done. So start up with this.
How to create a backup image using Macrium Reflect free. Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for AskLeo.com. One of the very common instructions I give people before doing something else, something major, is to create an image backup of their machine. If you've never done that, and if you don't know what it means, I want to show you one of the ways to do that. As always, there are plenty of different options, different tools, and so forth for making an image backup. But I'm going to show you today using the current version of Macrium Reflect free edition. So this is something that you can download, install, and create a backup image right now for no money. And I suggest you actually do that. Let's walk through the process. So we're over here on Windows 10. I'm firing up Edge. What I'm going to search for is literally Macrium Reflect free. And in fact, there are several different, you can see advertisers have popped up here in front. What we're looking for is specifically Macrium Reflect and the free edition. On the companion article for this video, I will have a direct link to exactly what you want. But if you're doing this yourself, this is what you're looking for, Macrium Reflect's free edition. They will promote their trial of the current version. That's kind of up to you. It's not what I'm going to do today, but if you think that you might end up purchasing the product eventually, the trial might be worth your effort. In the case of this example, I don't want to go that way. I want to go completely free. Now, even though it says commercial, I experimented with this the other day. You can actually do the download free commercial. I'm going to do the backup at home, Reflect 8 free, download free. We're just going to go ahead and download that. I need a personal license. I am not going to register or download. And there it comes. You can see it's downloading a .exe. That actually Reflect's downloader program. In other words, that was a very quick download. Running this now will actually cause the software to be downloaded. We're going to be downloading the free version. We're going to put it in this folder. We're going to run the installer right away. We'll just go ahead and click on download. At this point, we're done with the browser, so I'm going to go ahead and close that as well and get that out of our way. Of course, UAC, this installer does install things at a very low level requiring administrative access. Clicking Next to begin the process of installing. Setup Wizard, license agreement, of course. Personal use. I agree that this is being installed for personal non-commercial use. We're not going to register this. Again, this one's up to you. If you want to register it, by all means, go ahead, give them. They do not spam you. They do send you some marketing stuff and you can opt out at any time, but it's really not a problem. I'm on their list so many times that there's no point in my adding myself again. Installing the desktop shortcut, again, that's up to you. Normally I don't because I like a clean desktop, as you can see from the background here, but it's all up to you. These features are for the non-free version, and instant VM booting of Macrium backups, we don't need that right now. All we're trying to do is get a backup image of our machine, so we'll just go ahead and click Next, and we'll hit Install. Since we're done with the installation and we want to go directly into creating a backup image, we'll go ahead and let it launch now. If we weren't here, if we wanted to come back to it later, you'll see that there is in fact a shortcut on the desktop, and it has been added to the start menu and recently added, as well as under M here for Macrium and Macrium Reflect. So we'll go ahead and let this finish and start the program right away. So what we're looking at here is the default interface for the backup process in Macrium Reflect version 8. There are 2 disks on this machine. This top line, MBR disk 1, it's telling me that's the master boot record as opposed to a GPT type disk. Again, irrelevant at this point, but this is showing you the different partitions that are on the disk, and it will give us the option to back up the entire hard disk, which is this checkbox over here, or simply back up individual partitions. I recommend when you take an image of a hard disk, when you're backing up for real, that you always back up the entire hard disk unless you have a reason not to. By backing up the entire hard disk, the thing you're really protecting yourself from at that point is a hard disk failure. If the disk itself self-destructs and you lose everything on it, that would imply you have lost all of the partitions on that disk. Therefore, by having all of the partitions in your backup, you can simply restore to the replacement hard disk. There are other scenarios where you might want to only back up, say, the C partition, but that's not what we're going to do here. And in general, it's not what I recommend you do. The other disk here, MBR disk 2, well, that's my external drive. That is my USB drive that I have connected to this machine. And in fact, you can see it has a name, Noten XPS 15 Backup, because that's the machine it used to work on. And it has close to 1 terabyte of free space. What we're going to do is image selected disks on this computer. Now, yes, it looks like we've selected all of the disks, but if we just click on image the selected disks on this computer, we will now get to make the choice of which disks to be backed up. That means I want to uncheck the external drive. I'm leaving the internal drive, the drive that has the C partition on it, checked, and all of the partitions in it checked, so that we're backing up the entire physical hard drive. The destination, where do I want this to go? This little folder over here lets you navigate. It's not very obvious, but if you click on that little folder icon, you'll get a pop-up that then lets you say, okay, let's expand this. Let's go down and look at this backup drive. And I'm just going to go ahead and place the backup image in the root of this backup drive, which happens to be E in my case. And that's actually all it does, is it enters E:\/ for me. I could, if I wanted to, create a folder, a subfolder, places to put things, whatever. Again, that's always up to you. But for just doing a single quick backup, an example of a backup, I'm just going to write that to the root of the E drive. The backup file name, I'm actually going to leave that alone, because what it's going to do is give me an image ID, which will be unique for each image, and then some numbers that might be used later if you end up doing things like incremental or differential images on top of this. Again, our focus here is simply to create a single backup image of the entire machine, and that's a fine setting to leave alone. Now, in advanced options, You don't have to touch this. However, I generally do. And what I generally do, because machines are faster than they used to be, is I go ahead and hit high compression. That means it's going to spend a little bit more time in the processor compressing the data that it's putting out on the image file. The image file itself will be a little bit smaller. That means I can keep more images, I can keep other data on that external drive, I can do whatever I want. I see no reason not to have it default to high unless you happen to have a particularly slow machine. Everything else that's here, well, maybe auto verify is good to turn on as well. What that will do is once the backup image has been created, Reflect will go back and make sure that it has what it thinks, that the image was successful, that it actually compares correctly to what was backed up in the first place. Everything else here we really don't need to do. File size has more to do with if you're happening to back up to things like DVDs or CDs, which honestly nobody should be doing anymore. You can put a password on the image if you want to. I don't, but if this is one way to secure the image from prying eyes. Verify the file system. Honestly, all this really does is run check disk before it does the backup. There's really no need for the backup program to do that. If you want to run a check disk yourself, by all means, go for it. Backup set file name prefix. Well, we see we've already got the image ID as part of the file name. We can add comments to this backup if we want to, so that the image itself can also include a little bit of additional information about maybe why we created this backup or any other important information that you might want to keep with it. And then shut down. You can, in fact, let Reflect shut down the computer when it's done backing up. In this case, like I said, we're doing a single image, ideally in preparation for doing something else to the machine, setting ourselves a safety net. So we're not going to shut down, we're just going to let it run. We'll click on Next, actually. Now, this allows you to define schedules for this backup. We're not going to do that. Scheduling is beyond the scope of what I want to do today. Like I said, all I want to do is create an image backup. So we're going to click Next. This is a summary of what's going to happen. We don't really have to worry about the retention rules at this point. These are the operations that it's going to be doing. You can see there's a separate operation for each partition on the drive. We'll click on Finish. Now, there are two things that we may want to do here. We can either run the backup now, which is, of course, what we're going to do, but it also lets you save everything that you've just defined as an XML backup definition file. I'm not going to do that. If I were setting up a backup to be automated, if I were going to now say, this is what I want to happen every night, or once a week, or once a month, or whatever, then yes, we would be saving it into an XML file. But for our purposes here, we're just wanting to create a backup as simple and as easy as we can. Run this backup now, click OK, and off it goes. Now, as you can imagine, this is going to take a little while. How long it will take for you will depend on exactly how fast your machine is, how much data there needs to be backed up, how fast the hard disk is, how fast the USB interface is if you're potentially running on an older USB 2 interface. All those kinds of things contribute. What we're going to do here is let the backup run, and we will basically fast forward through everything from now until just before the backup completes. So enjoy. And we're done. It took 23 minutes for this machine to be backed up. A good chunk of that was the verification phase if you were watching closely on the progress. But that's it. We've got an image. Now, to confirm that we have, in fact, an image that we understand and expect, I'm closing Reflect here, and I'm just going to go ahead and open up Windows File Explorer. This time what we're going to do is go take a look at that backup drive, and there you'll see this file, this backup image. In fact, I'm going to change one option here to make sure that we're looking at extensions, because Macrium backup image files are .mrimgs. This is the file that we just created, and you can see that it is roughly 20 or about 30 gigabytes in size, which makes sense given the amount of data that's stored on this machine. But that's it. That was creating an image. Yes, there are other steps if you ever need to use this image, creating rescue media, restoring an image, restoring files from an image, those kinds of steps. But none of those are possible without this step. And no matter what happens, as long as you have this file, you can learn those other steps later. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this encourages you to create backup images before you do something major to your system, like upgrading the version of the operating system or doing other major things that you're uncertain of. By all means, create an image. It is just this simple. And while it takes a little bit of time, it takes a lot less time than having to recover from some of the failures that you're protected from if you don't have a backup.
Okay, so that was Leo's take on the free version. What I'm going to do now is go over some of the steps that I did on mine when I was testing it out to see if I could get it to work reliably. It's the main objectives I wanted is had to have reliable disaster recovery. I want to be able to set it and forget it automation and to optimize the space that it takes up, the time that it takes to do it, and the frequency of the number of backups. What I use for the data, I've got it set up so that I have a system drive that has the operating system on it with the programs and the settings and all the other things that are part of Windows. I wanted Macrium to do that because it can restore a bootable drive. The Windows file history can't do that, but the file history does a very good job of keeping your data backed up, as Bill just described in the previous presentation. So the reason I've separated it into two is so that the amount that Macrium Reflect has to do is a lot smaller. It doesn't have to do data and boot drive and everything, which would add up to quite a bit. So those are two links that I found on how to use the file history. I don't know if Bill had those mentioned in his, but those give a pretty good idea as another run through as to how to set it up. And in case you can't find the free edition of Macrium Reflect, this URL that's up there on Major Geeks will give you a link to the free version, which apparently is not supported by Macrium anymore, or they're not making it available, but you can still download it and it'll still keep working. They just won't be supporting it anymore. These are the licenses for Macrium that was on their website, and that macrium.com products home is where you can. It does seem a little on the expensive side now. I was hoping that they would have a user group discount, but there hasn't been anything come back from that yet. But there is a 30-day trial that is useful to test it out, which is what I've been doing. I got a quote back from them off their site that you pay for it once, and now you can use the software forever with no additional payments required later on to keep the software active, as would be the case with a subscription license. So it's not going to cost you another $100 next year and another $100 every month or whatever. But that just means that you own specifically Reflect 8. It doesn't guarantee free upgrades, and it doesn't guarantee that Reflect 8 will continue to be useful forever for your upgrade to other aspects of your environment, such as the PC or the used version. The three types of backup is the full, the differential, and the incremental. And I'll go through each one of those. First, the full backup, it backs up everything that you currently have selected for backup. It takes the longest time to do because it does the entire selection. It uses the most space of the three types. The next one, which the differential is based on the full, it builds on the most recent full backup. It consists of changes made since the last full backup, and the differentials aren't cumulative on each other. So if you do another differential, it doesn't do the changes since the previous differential. It goes right back to the most recent full backup. Here is a definition that we have for differentials. Differential backup is a backup method that backs up all changes made to a file or system since the last full backup was performed. This means that all changes made since the last full backup, including any changes made during subsequent incremental backups. The differential backups are usually performed on a regular basis, such as daily or weekly, and are useful for situations where frequent backups are necessary, but a full backup is too time-consuming or storage-intensive to perform regularly. The next one is the incremental backups, and it consists of changes made since the last backup. That is either the previous incremental, the previous differential, or the previous full backup. The incrementals, unlike the differentials, are cumulative on each other. And they are usually the quickest of the types because it has less to back up. The incremental definition, an incremental backup is a backup method that only backs up changes made to a file or system since the last backup was performed. This means that only the changes made since the last backup are saved, which reduces the amount of storage space required for backups and speeds up backup times. Incremental backups are usually performed on a regular basis, such as daily or weekly, or you can even do it every 10 minutes if you need to have a more frequent backup. The problems with the incrementals is with Macrium Reflect, I found anyway, that when it consolidates two incrementals into one, it took almost as long to do an incremental as it did to do the original full backup. So I found that they should be avoided due to the additional time that it takes to do them. The other problem is that deleting an incremental means that all the ones that came after it are now invalid or they won't work. There wasn't a way of disabling the consolidation until version 8, and I got a reply back from them as of Reflect 8.6758. We've added an option to disable consolidation for incremental retention by setting a system registry key, and if this key entry doesn't exist, then it can be created using regedit. And here is the edit that you can either check or you can add into, which is in the local machine, and the value you set to 0 to disable it or 1 to enable it. And the other part of the response that I got back from it was that if consolidation is disabled and incremental retention is applied to a backup set, the incremental backups are only deleted if by doing so it will not break the backup chain. That's because each incremental is dependent on the one before it. The number of incremental backups retained will also be at least the number specified by the incremental retention rule, which is in the settings, which I'll get to later. This definition file setting is the one that I found seemed to work the most reliably, and it didn't have as many problems as other ones. I tried various different ones to see if I could get an optimized value, as I mentioned right at the very first few slides. One thing I did find by mistake was on section 2 with the schedule. You have to make absolutely sure that the time that each of the 3 start is the same time. If you're off by a minute, you end up with a full, a differential, and an incremental, all made on, if it occurs at the same time, if they're not all at the same time, you'll end up with different versions of the same thing all made just whenever you set it for. So that's a useful thing to remember. The other thing I did in the retention rules, I have it set to do a full every month on the first Monday. So by keeping 3, it keeps 3 months. By keeping 3 differentials, it keeps 3 weeks. And then by keeping 18 of the incrementals, it keeps the incrementals for those from those differentials as well. I found that the run purge before backup isn't such a good idea to have that checked on. I actually ran into a situation where that was on, and it took off the backup before the previous ones before it started, and then it messed up. So it essentially wiped out all the backups. Great. So that's one that is probably a good idea to check to make sure you don't have it checked on. The purge oldest backup sets, I ran into problems with that one turned on as well. So it's a good idea to have that one checked off, or so that it's not on. This retention rules, when it gets to, in this case, it got to the 4th differential backups. As you can see there were 4 found. So it deletes the differential, and then it also deletes the incrementals that are dependent on it. And it always makes sure that it keeps at least 18 incrementals, which is what it did there. The other thing they added to Macrium are new columns. So when you're in Windows File Explorer, if you right click and go through the listing of column selections, you can add backup method, which is an important one to have, because by looking at the names, unless you hover over it, you can't tell a differential from an incremental or a full. But with the column in File Explorer, you can. The other one that they have is the backup comment, which isn't quite so useful unless you've got multiple instances of Macrium Reflect running all the time, which is not very likely either. One of the problems they had with it, if you look at the screenshot that I had there, they end up with what's highlighted in blue, something showing up which doesn't say either full, incremental, or differential. It turned out that this was what they replied, that the text is being incorrectly displayed from a third-party library that we use, and I'm afraid that we're getting no help from the developers on this problem at this time. It looks as though we may have to ditch the library, as this problem is proving incredibly difficult to reproduce and debug. Basically, all you have to do is just refresh File Explorer, and then it should go back to being full, incremental, and differential. It looks as though it's been fixed now, because it doesn't, I haven't noticed this problem showing up at all recently. The Macrium image guardian, sorry, it's located under other tasks, and when it's turned on, it prevents something like ransomware or any other programs from changing or modifying or doing anything to the image file, and it won't let you delete it or move it either. So if you wanted to put it on another, copy it to another drive and remove it, you would have to turn this off. So if you're going to do that, do it to turn it off, and then as soon as you're finished, you turn it back on again to make sure that your images are protected. The compression level, as Leo went through, there's no real reason for having this anything less than high. The time saving, unless you've got a really slow machine, maybe, but on mine it does the incrementals in less than a minute, and that's on high compression, so it doesn't really need to be anything less than that. The backup verification, that's a good one to make sure you've got turned on as well, as Leo noted, and the file system verification as well. As I went through what I'd learned from Leo, he said that he went through incrementals forever, which at the time I thought meant that it created one full backup and then you just kept making incrementals. And to me, that didn't make too much sense, because if anything happened to any of those incrementals along the way, everything after it would then be useless. But it turns out that the way the incrementals are forever is actually supposed to be used is that it optimizes space and time by only ever creating a single full backup. And after this, the incremental backups are created ad infinitum. The full backup is consolidated with subsequent incrementals backup once the specified number of incremental backups is reached. And this is also known as a synthetic backup. So what that essentially means is that the backup, if it's made on Monday, the next day, it adds that Tuesday's incremental to it, and that becomes the full backup on the Tuesday, and so on. And the video link that I've got at the bottom there, I've actually got linked, if I can get it to play. So the incrementals forever is the claim anyway, is the most efficient way to maintain a rolling series of recent backup points. Only a single full backup is required. All subsequent backups are incremental. The old incrementals are merged into the full, and this avoids the need to create a full when purging old incrementals, and it's called a synthetic backup. So after creating the 6th incremental backup, the full is merged with the oldest to create the new synthetic full. And I only learned about this trick last night, so I haven't tested it out to see if it works properly or not. The one that I mentioned with the 3318, I've been doing that one for about a year now and doing screenshots to compare them, and I can state that it works quite reliably now. Whether the incremental one forever is any better or worse, I don't know. I'm going to test it out and see what happens. So I'll stop sharing my screen. And back to you, John.
Very good. Thanks. That was a good demonstration on how to use it. And hopefully if you get the version 8, you can still use it for a while from the free one. But I guess it's if a program you really like, then it's worth the money for you. Judy has questions for all of our presenters. Hopefully they're not mixed up if everybody put the letters down. So she'll share questions with our 3 presenters, and then when she runs out of questions, we'll open things up. So Judy.
Thank you so much, John, and absolutely fantastic presentations. This ends our backup month, and I hope we have persuaded those who are not backing up to back up, and those who are backing up but not quite happy with their backup program, you've had the opportunity to explore others. And the Macrium Reflect program is going to be sunsetted by the company in England. They have an office in Boulder also. And on January 1st, 2024, after that, the free program goes away. It still can be used. It's just never going to get updated again. So Jerry, he said, in a previous OS, I was able to delete a particular file from a stored backup, but can't do it now. Is this something Apple has changed?
Yes.
Well,
Yes, Apple wants you to back up the entire device, basically.
okay, so they changed things. Is that for the better, or you would rather that not had happened?
I like to do a complete backup, so very seldom do I want to go in and just delete one file or two, but you can. I mean, it's an option, but I don't do it.
Okay, because we Windows people, we get, you know, new stuff, and we wish that they hadn't done the new stuff, that we like the way it was before.
Yep.
And we have a comment about the ever popular flash drives, and they're being electronic, so they need to be kept in a climate protected environment, and they will lose content if not powered up every once in a while. Good to know. And everything I looked on the internet, Rick's tips says, if you go ahead, back up to a flash drive, but make sure you have the backup someplace else. So yes, you can back up to flash drives, but beware, it needs to be on an external or in the cloud too. So, and you know, and you do have the easiest one of all. I saw that when I gave the information to somebody who had sent me an email, doggone it. Very few steps. Mark, is it a good idea to format your external drive before using it? And that's what Jerry did with when he's put his Windows external hard drive to his Mac. So should everybody do that?
I certainly do. And it's funny, I think you were the one that said that Western Digital came with all sorts of crapware on it. And they do. And that's why I just format them before I do anything else. And that gets rid of all of that.
Okay, got it. Have you ever had any issues with the AOMI Backup Pro's restore function to a different kind of hardware, like a recovery computer?
Yeah, so I saw that question in the chat. I haven't had any trouble, but I have to say that at work, all of our machines are Dells. So I don't have any experience with trying to restore an HP to a Dell. I think you'd have trouble doing that because the drivers aren't going to be the same.
Okay. And what is the effect on scheduled backups of shutting your machine down at night? Should you keep it turned on while you have it automatically set up to back up at 5 a.m. in the morning, so to speak? Should you leave your machine on or not?
I don't know if AOMI has this feature, but there are programs where you can set an alarm and they can tell, depending on the capability of your computers, they can have the computer wake itself up or turn itself back on at a given time and run a particular program. I have no idea if AOMI can do that. I'll tell you what, if whoever did that, whoever asked that, if you'll send me your email address, I'll look into it and find out.
And this is from me. I learned way back in the day that you could name your, you should name your external hard drive X. So you didn't have to worry about it just plugging it in and becoming the next alphabet letter in line. And oh gosh, it doesn't work with that letter.
Yep.
See, I date back to the really old stuff. So thank you so much for your great presentation. This is for Bill. Windows 11, or is it just folders, not an, and you can't do an operating system image?
Yes, you can still do a system image, but you have to use the Windows 7 backup program. And it has at the bottom, there's a link that says, make a system image.
If you set file history and say, I want it to back up once a day at a particular time, where do you find out how to do that?
It would be in the drop-down box under the advanced options. You have the choice of selecting from a week, a month, or so when you're setting it up, you just go there and select that, select those options of how do you, at the intervals you want to back up.
And I recommend that, I think the default might be, keep everything forever, and you really don't want to do that because all of a sudden your external hard drive is full. Is control panel ever going to go away and everything go into settings? It seems like they're putting stuff every once in a while. They keep referring to control panel.
I have thought for years, ever since Windows 8, that Microsoft was gradually going to move most of the settings that were found in the control panel to found most of the functions that were in the control panel moving to settings. And as you could see in Windows 11, there was a huge migration of a lot of the functions in settings now. So I think eventually it's going to go away, or at least it's not going to, right now it's not the primary focus. I mean, if you want to get to the control panel, you have to go in and put it in the search bar to pull it up. But it's not it's not listed as an app or anything like that in Windows 11.
I have backed up Word and PDF files in Windows 11 Cloud, but every once in a while, I suddenly can't seem to access my files on the Windows Cloud. Then mysteriously, I can access it again. Am I confusing my backup files with cloud files?
I saw that too. I tried to answer it. By default, unless you set it up differently, Office uses OneDrive as the storage location. And so unless you're using another backup program, you should be able to find your files and folders listed in File Explorer. Now, if you're using another backup, I don't know how that's working for you, but OneDrive it's just another storage location in File Explorer, so you can go there and find all your files there. Now, one thing you have to remember too is that depends on if you have them. Well, I don't think it makes a difference. Even if it's located on your local drive, you can still see them. So I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't know how to answer that question, actually.
Okay, I'll send it to you and you can muddle around with it and maybe do some research on it for us.
Sure.
For this
Be
gal.
glad to.
Thank you. This is really for Steve, but I'm going to ask you because you're a Windows guy. Windows 11 says I have an S machine. I turned mine into a regular machine. Windows 11 says I can't download Macrium Reflect from the store and install it. Why would they stop me from doing that?
Because on S machines, you have to use the Microsoft Store. So if Macrium is not in the store, you can't download it.
Okay. Steve, these are for you. What is the difference when you started the backup between what you choose, the TV looking icon, and the one that has a Windows icon?
I'm not sure what that means.
I'll send that to you.
Okay.
What's the difference between doing a clone and doing an image backup?
The same.
They're the same thing,
Yeah.
aren't they? Full.
This-
System.
different
Well,
job.
no, and actually what a clone actually means is that you've got two physical hard drives and you're taking exactly what's on one bit by bit from that one drive to another, so that everything is in exactly the same place as it is on one drive to the other drive. And that's what a clone is. An image of a system, it can have set for just the system files without things like the swap file or the system information thing that keeps putting itself in every directory. It leaves all that stuff. You can set it so it'll leave all that stuff out. And that's not a clone, that's a system image.
How do you use the XML file to automatically re-back up the drives?
Well, the XML is the sort of scripting file where it keeps how many days you want to run the thing for, or what times you have it run at. So you can actually go into the XML file. I think you can probably use Notepad, and you can change the entries in there. Just be careful that you keep a copy of your original one, because if you mess it up, then you end up having to start all over again.
Can I use a mirror image of my C drive, a 256 gigabyte SSD, to restore to a replacement drive, say a larger SSD?
Sure.
Yep. And how does Macrium handle using different sequential hard drives? Separate lists or combined?
I haven't tried it on different ones. I've just tried it off the same one.
And that is all the questions I have in the chat box. It has been shut down for a while. Jerry Crow, it's your turn.
Actually, could I ask Bill one question?
Absolutely.
With the file history, I wondered, does it, when you have it set to run file history once a day, does it tell you anywhere what time of day it's going to run it?
Mhm.
You selected in the choices, you tell it what time you want it to run.
Okay.
You
'cause
should see it. You
I
should see it in
didn't
the,
specify. I didn't specify any time, and I wasn't able to figure out where the.
it should have been down in, it should be in the drop-down box.
Yeah. Okay.
No, Mike, it's kind of where the, how long do you want to keep it? And don't choose forever.
Mhm.
Jerry,
When you,
oops, not yet.
I was going to say, when you hit daily, it's going to give you the days of the week. And then when you hit hourly, it's going to give you the time. So you have to look at, it's going to probably give an arrow to the left to show you that.
Yeah, because I use that old file 7, I have Win 10, and I use the Windows 7, and it backs up sometime every single day. Then I set that up just at random. My iDrive cloud backup, it backs up at 5 p.m. every day. Jerry Crow, you're on.
I have a couple of observations, and first of all, I wanted to mention to Mark, and he mentioned phones. If one has an Android phone in Samsung, I don't know if it applies to other Androids. I have a Samsung Galaxy S22. There's a program from Samsung called Smart Switch. You can back up the entire content of your phone to a PC, and you can do it. I do it through a USB cable. I just, connect the C cable into USB port, and the computer picks it up. Now there's a companion program on the PC called Smart Switch. You've got to download that from some Samsung site somewhere. But it's really great. And plus it has a restore, which I've never tested because I have no way to test it. Okay. But anyway, I found that very handy. And my procedure is simply that I back my phone up to the PC before I do my PC backup. Now I follow Mark's usage scenario number 1. I have external drives connected to my machine, and I just use Acronis. These presentations have been fabulous, but incremental this, incremental that, do that. I make one full, complete backup of my machine a week to one of those external hard drives. That just seems to be the simplest thing for me to do. And an added bonus is, one, I can pick a file off. Those things are accessible with Internet Explorer. You can go right out into the backup and pick up a single file that you may wish. Second and final, Judy, thank you for letting me talk. Second, last thing, that image is restorable. In other words, you can put a flash drive in and the Acronis will create a bootable image on that USB stick. And then if your system crashes, you put a new drive in, you just put that in, boot from that, and point that flash drive at one of your backups, and it'll restore your whole machine. So anyway, that just seems simpler to me than doing all this incremental stuff, but I'm not bad-mouthing anybody. I mean, there's so many options and so many usage patterns. So anyway, thank you, Judy.
Hey, Jerry, how long have you been using Acronis?
Oh,
02?
pardon me?
Never, forever, right?
Yeah, just forever, yes. I have not, I'm using 2020 now because I have a complete, I don't have their pay by the year thing yet, but they're in that mode now, and I get the newsletters from those guys, user group, Gene, can't remember his last name.
Gene Barlow.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, so, but yes, I love Acronis.
I would love to have somebody do a presentation on it sometime, and Gene does give a 50% discount on all of the Acronis products.
Well, I'll be glad to do that sometime. If you can't get Gene, he'd be the one to do it.
No, he doesn't. He had several strokes, and he doesn't do presentations nor offer tech support anymore, but he and Linda still offer the 50% discount, and I just wrote your name down in ink, so I've got your name on there. Renee, you're on. Unmute, thank you.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we'd be getting an email with the links to where we could find the presentations, or where do we find them?
Always, John explained that. You get everything. You're not going to get it tomorrow. You're not going to get it next week, but you're going to get a link to the YouTube 2 videos. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. To the 2 videos, the PDF presentation, the links to both of the videos, that Steve showed us, and it will be in your inbox.
Well, that's great, because some of the addresses I was trying to write down, I didn't get them all.
No. Remember, Windows key print screen, and you get a screenshot, your screen blinks, and it goes immediately into your pictures / screenshots folder. Do
Okay.
not write things down. That's passé.
Thanks.
Carl,
Before you answer the next one, there's another function that Macrium Reflect has that I discovered that's actually pretty cool, is you can set the image as a virtual machine. So once it's done your boot drive, you can then mount that boot drive in a virtual machine, and you can test it out to see if it works, which is a good way, because then you don't have to physically restore it to another drive to test it.
a ton and a half of APCUG people use Macrium Reflect. And since user groupies are a cheap lot, it will be interesting to know how many of them pay the money to upgrade to the full program. Everything that I have read by any reviewer says it's well worth it. Carl, you're on.
Yeah, I have a Android phone, and I have Google and OneDrive. My OneDrive is part of my Office 365, so I have a lot of storage. But I'm always running out of storage on Google, and I don't want to pay extra because my experience is I'm saving stuff that I really don't care. So, but what's the best way to, well, the first question is, when I take a video or something.
You have frozen in time.
I'll keep his hand up, and hopefully maybe he was Wi-Fi and lost the connection there. So
Thank you. Over to you, Gary.
Yes, hi. I've got Macrium, the paid version. I've got 4 physical hard drives in my desktop. I've created a, I think what they call is a document file, the .xml, for each of my physical hard drives. And I've done it before, but I can't remember how to select that any particular XML file from the menu up top in Macrium. I can't figure out how to do that.
Yeah, if you got it showing in the list, you just click on one, and you should have, if you've got more than one XML file, they should all be there if they're in the same directory.
Under what menu item do I find that to choose?
In the definition files.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I see file, view, backup, restore, other tags, and help.
No, down below is the panel that has local disks, definition files, scripts, scheduled backups. The definitions files is where all of your XML files are, and you can just select one and run it with clicking on the run or right clicking to the run.
Under definition file.
It's a tab. It's a tab. There's 4 tabs: local disks, definition files, scripts, and scheduled backups. You see those?
Yes, and I'm clicking on the definition files, and
okay, then you have a list. It might be really compressed, but you pull down the viewer a little bit, and then you can see that I have like 3 definition files. And
it just says to add to this list, create. I mean, I've already got them.
Yeah, but
save.
I think you're not seeing. You have to pull down the window. There's a window bar there. You have to pull down the window expander a little bit.
Yeah, I think I have to. I've got them saved on the hard drive backup file, CDEF, but they're not listed here.
No, this would be in these definition files are in your main program disk.
Yeah.
I think you have to play with it. I didn't want to take a lot of time. I just wanted to say that was my point, was that you go to the definition files tab, click on that, and you'll see the XML files. And you don't have to get in and start editing these things. I wouldn't ever do that. They're more for viewing, although they do have an edit button for it. Just run, select one, and then there's a run icon that lets you run that definition.
Yeah.
That's the way we tell our people in our club is to, you know, do one backup and then start with that definition file every time and just hit run again, and you won't you don't have to recreate another definition every time.
Exactly, and I've done this before without going through this menu that you listed. There's somewhere up in the top there that I did, and I just can't find it, but it's fine. I'll fill it. I'll fill around with it. But
yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention,
forget.
which is my last point, is that I've used Macrium for years. It's only the free version that is being sunsetted. The rest of the the paid version is not being sunsetted in it.
Right.
It might have been implied that it was the whole thing being sunsetted. Thank you.
Kevin, you are on.
Yes, my very first comment is my apologies to John Kennedy for accidentally sending a chat to him. I sort of chatted it to Judy on my question many speakers ago, but I will try never to do that again. Thank you for the mention of Smart Switch, but Mark, do you back up your Android phone address book? And if you do, what do you use? And if not, why do you not do that?
Well, I keep all my contacts in Google. So they're on Google's website as well. And I do export that every once in a while. So yeah, so it gets backed up. If I lose my phone, it's all going to be up on google.com.
I got it. Okay, thank you so much for that. And then finally, somebody asked about the Windows 11 backup. And I thought that Windows 11 might not allow you to do certain types of image backups because I think by default, on some installations of Windows 11, they encrypt the drive. And I'm wondering if maybe that would screw up an image backup. I don't know, because I've had to set up a number of Windows 11 computers, and it seems that Microsoft is changing the steps for the install of Windows 11 on each one, and different options are given at different times. Pretty confusing, but maybe because in some cases, I think that the encryption option is turned on by default, and maybe that would mess up the image backup that somebody was referring to. They said USB backups, but I think it was probably an image backup that was the issue.
The encryption software for Windows is BitLocker, but I don't believe that's turned on by default.
On a brand new Windows 11 computer, if you give it a computer name and you sign in with Microsoft, there have been some that have done that, and not all of them, because I've installed 11. I've set up some Windows 11 computers and they don't, but some of them did. And I think there was actually, go ahead.
Can I jump in here? So every new computer we've got that's got Windows Pro on it, that's the key, has got encryption turned on by default. And if you do the backups, if you have like Macrium Reflect installed and you run it from within Windows 11 on that machine, there won't be any issues with the encryption. If you boot from the rescue disk and you try to do a backup, then you run into some issues. Restoring won't be an issue, but doing the backup, if you do it from a rescue disk, is an issue if there's encryption. So it's the version. It won't be there in Windows Home, but in Windows Pro, it'll be there and it'll be turned on.
Thank you very much for that. And also, I assume that the backup you're talking about is an image backup and not just a backup of files.
Yeah, correct. Because if it's if you're doing like free file sync, none of that matters. But
right.
Yeah, for an image backup. So as long as you run it from within that machine while it's running, then there won't be an issue.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Mary Ann.
Yes, I have Macrium and I did what they called a separate boot drive. Is that what you did, Steve, originally? The image backup is the same thing as a boot drive. And if so, can I put more things on that external drive that I put the boot drive on, or do I have to keep it separate so that you only use that particular thumb drive to reestablish things?
No, you can boot from the image and you can change it any way you want. The more you add to it, the more it has to back up and the longer it's going to take, but there's no real limit to it. I just have it to back up the system separately from the data, so that you don't really need a bootable data drive, but you do need a bootable boot drive.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. I guess I don't understand the lingo. So I need to keep the bootable drive for the system separate from all my files.
Yeah, it's a better way of doing it because then the two don't get intermixed. So that if all you're wanting to do is just restore your system and you want to keep your data as it is, if you've just got a Macrium Reflect image of your system, you can then restore it over top of the whole thing, and you don't have to worry about your data being all over the place because it'll still be assigned to where it was on the other drive.
Okay, thank you.
Bob,
Yes, somebody asked about clone and image. There is a difference between clone and image. Clone copies empty space, an image does not, so you save disk space. But my question before that I text in was about 11. Windows 11 says from the Windows Store I cannot install. Like I just saw him install this. What was it? Macrium with no problem. My Windows 11. I have Windows 11 Pro, by the way, and my default on the encryption was not on. I have 3 machines of Pro, and when I installed them, they didn't have it automatically turned on. But my other question is, I go into Tech Republic, which is owned, and System Utilities owned by Microsoft, and I want to install the Zoom It so you can zoom in on when you're doing a presentation, you can zoom a specific part of the screen. And every time I try and install it, it says it's not from the Windows Store. And if I go to Windows Store, it's not even there. And then I try it again, and it keeps coming back to I can't install this because it's not from the Windows Store. I'm sure there's a way around it. Probably going into it, once you download it, you can probably right-click it and change the security on it. I haven't tried that yet. So that's what I was wondering, because Malware Bytes does the same thing. If I download, I have Malware Bytes on my machine, and I'll start it, and it says I got a new version. I'll click, oh, I want the new version. It comes up and says it'll download it, but when I try and go into download and click on the download file, it says I can't install this because it's not from the Windows Store. Does anybody have that same problem on Windows 11 Pro?
No.
Bob,
No.
Bob, my thing is when I accidentally bought a Windows S computer and immediately went in and tried to download Zoom at zoom.us/download, and Windows told me I couldn't, I immediately went up to the store and got rid of the S. I'm secure enough myself, and I know my own apps and where to get them, that I didn't need the Microsoft Store, the only go-to place for me. So I turned it into a regular laptop, and it was the Dell.
You can go in and change that that setting. You can convert an S to a regular.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah. But
what do you mean change an S to a regular? What's this S?
an S is a software that Microsoft installs on some of their less expensive computers that only allows you to install programs that are in the Microsoft Store.
Yeah, but I'm not an S computer. I got Windows Pro.
If you have Windows Pro, then you don't have S.
No. And I can't install it. I go in and try and install Macrium. I download it and I click on it to install it, and it comes up and says it's not a Microsoft Store app. You can't install this. And every time I try it, I get the same message.
You don't have. Go to your system and look under About and see if it's Windows Home or Windows Home S.
It's Windows Pro.
Yeah, if it's Windows Pro, you should. If you have Windows 11 Pro, you should have no problems. I don't know what the issue is on that.
I have it.
There is a place at the bottom left of that window that comes up that says this is not in a Windows Store. there's a button down at the lower left that says install anyway, or something like, what do you want to do? You can override that block. And I'm pretty sure it's in the lower left of that window. It happens to me all the time.
I used to get that, but not with this one. With the Zoom in.
I have Windows Pro, I have Windows 11 Pro, and I can tell you that that works. And I install new software almost once a week that's not in the Windows Store. So Bob, you and I can work on this separately, but for anybody else, you can override that block by saying, I know what I'm doing, install it.
Yeah, I used to get that. This particular one, I don't have that option.
It's in the lower left of that window.
Yeah, I used to have the option, but I don't have it on that particular one.
I'll send you a picture. I'll send you a picture of that window the next time I get it. Okay.
I can give you one other solution that should work. If you go to settings and it's in update and security, and then under developers, there's an option to say install software from any source. And if you turn that on, it shouldn't give you any trouble.
Yeah, I think I also tried that also, and it still didn't work.
Really? Wow.
It sounds like a question to Microsoft.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's a Google question. But you guys can duke it out at one of your SIGs in New Jersey. And Bill made me feel really bad because my Dell was $1,000 computer on sale. And first time I'd ever spent that much money, and come to find out it was a stupid S machine, was appalling to me. But anyway, John, you're on.
The reason I put my hand up, the one thing that I didn't hear in any of these excellent presentations about different backup methods is testing your backup.
Thank you.
This is like, you went through all of these school years and you had fire drills all the time. Well, you've got to test that your BIOS is set to allow you to boot from the external medium that you have to create. You have to create that external medium of a flash drive or a CD or DVD, and you've got to be able to boot to it. If you haven't tested that, your backup is worthless. Every time I do a backup, and I use Macrium regularly, but every time I do a backup, the next thing I do when it finishes is I go into Macrium, and Steve talked about this, but it is mount the backup as a drive. So I test my backup to make sure that the backup that I created, the file, is actually usable. I see that I can read the files off it. So one of the other things you can do with Macrium is you can just take the backup and copy a file out of the backup by mounting the backup file as an external drive in your regular system. You don't have to boot to it. You don't have to put it on some other disk. It's already on another disk because it's on my secondary disk. But I mount it and make sure I can read it. And then I copy it to another disk drive. But you have to test that for that computer, you can plug in a bootable device, external medium, and that works, and that you can read the other device as well. Let's say you only have one USB port on your device for some reason. Well, how are you going to do that? You got an external medium you had to boot to, and now you got another external drive. You got to do the fire drill and make sure that you can use your backup. And I just wondered, as long as we're here, and you say a lot of people use Macrium, has some club, Steve, approached Macrium to see if we can get a group discount? I know APCUG doesn't support any individual manufacturers.
No, we can do that. No problem.
It'd be great to be able to get even a 20% discount.
Like
Yeah,
I
'cause
said,
in
user groupies are cheap.
Canada, in Canada where I am, that 70 US translates to 120 Canadian, so it's not cheap.
No, John, I will do that. You can pick up the phone and talk to them sometimes, which is really good. And my thing
get
about checking your data is every once in a while you need to make a test 1, test 2, test 3, whatever, Excel, PowerPoint, little bit Word document, and back it up and go in there and make sure it is actually there and it is a good backup, because you don't want to be backing up your data and find out that it's not any good.
Yeah, if you've only done the backup, you've only done half the job.
Yeah.
You'd always restrict. What I do or used to do was I always got 2 hard drives. One had the system on it. The other one was for testing it. I'd take the image or the clone and put it on a blank drive to make sure it was the same as the one that was booted from.
Important security message. Your computer has been locked up.
Somebody needs to quiet their security message. Kathleen, you're on.
First of all, thank you to John for bringing that up, because I've always been afraid to do a test for fear it would overwrite my good files. Now I know what to do. I'm still confused between a mirror image and a clone, in particular for backing up before you upgrade, like from Windows 7 to 10 or 10 to 11 or whatever. What should you use? Which one?
Mark, can you answer that question?
Yeah, sure. So you want to take an image. A clone is mostly useful when you've got 2 hard drives and you want to, say you got a faster, larger hard drive in your computer and you're going to get rid of your old hard drive, but first you want to copy all the data from the old hard drive onto the new hard drive. That's where clone comes in really useful. But for what you're talking about, image, that's what you want to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Carl.
There we go. There we go. Last time I tried to ask a question, my network didn't like what I was saying because it shut me down and I went into reboot.
Use different words this time.
Yeah, we missed you.
What I have a Android OnePlus phone, and everything that I do goes up into Google and goes up into OneDrive. So I'm getting duplicates, but I don't want to pay for extra space on Google. What's the best way for me to download videos that I take that are, taking up space on Google that I don't want to? Do I just use my USB micro to mini cable and download them to my computer? And how quickly, when I take a video, does it go up onto Google Pictures or Cloud?
I can't answer your second question, but yes, download it to your computer's hard drive, and the next time you do your backup, it's to your external hard drive or the cloud, whatever you use.
Well, change your settings. Change your settings so that the folder to which these videos are put in the first place on your Chromebook is not a folder that gets backed up.
Okay, thank you.
Gary?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to report that you solved my problem of the definition files not showing up. I didn't realize it, but all I had to do was under the definitions files tab, I click on add, find out where I had saved them on my external hard drive. So now I've got all 4 XML definition files listed, and all I have to do is click on them and boom, it's going to run. So thanks. I could not figure that out.
Wednesday workshops are warts and all, but we are here for users helping users, which is the tagline for many groups.
Yeah, there's one problem with what Gary just said that I discovered last night as well. If you've got more than one XML file in there, you'll try and run all of them. And if I had two in there, one from before, and it tried to run it and error it out because it wasn't a the settings for it didn't match what I changed it to. But yeah, if they're in that same directory and they're showing up, it'll try and run all of them that are in there. So you only want the one, XML file in there that you actually have it run regularly.
Well, each one is a different file name, and I've got 4 physical hard drives. So I think I tried them, and it kind of showed up each one that I clicked on separate from the other ones. So I don't know why
Yeah,
that
the way to check is to go through the log files and see if it actually tried to run all the XML files. I did that last night on mine, and that's what happened. So I ended up having to make sure it only had the one XML file in there.
Well, I clicked on one of them, and then it shows all 4 of them under the selected drive, and only the one that I want to back up is actually checked. So it's kind of contrary to what you're saying, but I'll watch for that. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, there's a lot of glitchy things in Macrium still that they haven't fixed.
Okay.
But a gazillion people still like using it. Andy Kerrigan.
Hi, just a couple of quickies. Number one, a big attaboy to all the presenters, outstanding presentations. Number two, without getting into all the different backups, I've used Acronis and Macrium and some of the Windows backups. Cloning, imaging, differences, I wouldn't even go near what the presenters talked about today. When I do something that's a little simple and stupid. I use an old-fashioned Windows batch file or a Linux script file and do a simple copy to an external hard drive, to a flash drive or an external hard drive, because that takes out I don't have to worry about whether an image is going to be accessible, if I can boot from it, or if I have the software, is it going to run on a machine? I can take it from one machine to the other. And since I do work with multiple external USB drives, the one thing that I did, because I got caught a couple of times, is I simply changed the volume label on all of them. So when I plug it in, I see that this is, drive 1, as opposed to drive 2, as opposed to drive 3, instead of having 4 different Western Digital drives that are all called My Passport. That's it. Thanks a lot again for everything. Bye.
And I gave a presentation last night to a group on why in the world do I need to back up. And one of the gentlemen, all he does is pop a flash drive in and copy and send it over. And he does it at about once a month, and he's a happy camper using that. So
and it's very simple. Well, that's where you talk about a Windows Task Manager.
Okay.
Where you can schedule a task. You don't have to do anything.
Okay, so everybody does everything differently, totally different.
Yep.
Yeah, you can do that for files, but you can't do it for a boot drive.
Right. But again, like I said last night, if something happens to my computer, and as long as I have my data, backed up, I'm just going to buy another computer because I want the latest and greatest of whatever it is. And we have no more raised hands.
Yes, we do. My hand has been up for a while.
Oh my gosh, I
just,
wonder why it disappears in your background there.
Right, but my hand is up.
I know. I'm sitting with way back, relaxed and straight. I can see it.
2 things, and some of it has already been covered. If you don't test your backup, you haven't done a darn thing, because unless you know that the image is a valid image that you can reproduce on the new hard drive or recreating the old hard drive, it's of no use whatsoever, because invariably you're going to wind up that when you need it and you haven't tested it, it's not going to work. The other thing is, if you simply make copies of the files, that's fine for restoring your files. It doesn't do your operating system. It doesn't do the settings. It doesn't do all the stuff that you need if you really want to start from scratch on a new hard drive and have everything back that you had when the old hard drive crashed. So yeah, there are times when all you need is just simply a backup, whether it's on a hard drive, on a flash drive, or up in the cloud, because all you're going to do is restore those files. I do that with OneDrive. When my computer starts to get a little cranky because I've tested too many programs, I just said, okay, let's restart from scratch. I'll reinstall Windows and let OneDrive bring back all the stuff that's backed up. That excludes all the garbage that I've been testing. And then I can go ahead and reinstall the actual programs I want to use. But that's not the same as an image backup. An image backup is a copy of your current hard drive, including everything that's on it, which is your operating system, all of its settings, all of its drivers. So there's a time for a backup, and there's a time for just copying your files.
Would you do me a favor? I use your backups system the way you do it once a week, and several of my presentations. Would you tell everybody what you do once a week?
Simple. I use what's been available on Windows since version 7. And that's the image backup that's built into Windows. It works on the very latest version of Windows 11.
But your schedule.
Back once per week. I turn off my internet that night when the image is going to be created. It then creates an image backup. The next morning, I get out of bed. The image was finished, it's created. Then I turn my internet back on. Make sure that my hard drive is disconnected, the external is disconnected from the internet, and then I go back to work. Now, if something happens, my system gets infected, it can't get to the backup. If the hard drive crashes, well, I have a backup, and I test my backups occasionally. I don't have to do it very often because if I know if one's working, unless something's happened to the hard drive, the next one's going to work. But that's how I do an image backup on a weekly basis. It's scheduled right within Windows Scheduler. And you set it up when you first start that. Backup and restore Windows 7 is what it's called, but it works on Windows 11. And I'm an insider, so it works on the latest build of Windows 11.
And I need to know what night you do that, so my story is true when I tell it about you.
Every Saturday night.
Oh, I was right. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Gary.
One thing that's been missing is how to create a rescue media. When I go into Macrium and I click on create a rescue disk or media, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. I mean, there's a whole thing to choose from. And so I might have a good backup. I might want to check on a file to restore, but it's confusing as to what will make my PC boot from an external, from a flash drive or whatever correctly. And that has not been discussed. And I hope maybe one day there will be a more definitive explanation as to what I should do.
I want to do a whole bunch of mini presentations. I just added that to my list. I don't want to do it, but I want people to do them. So thank you for that. Dale,
thank you.
You are our last question, and you need to hurry because you need to get to your next meeting.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, I'm probably getting a little confused on your terminology, and I'm not up to date with it. I have on my backup and mirror, and then you've mentioned clone and boot. And I wanted just to know where I can try to equate some of the things that you're using, clone and all. You know, if I need a boot disk or boot section, I need to know how to do that. And is it the same as clone or mirror or image or?
Dale, I have a list that I put together on backup buzzwords that we don't know what they mean. I'll add clone and whatever you want. Send me an email and I'll add it to my list for you and I'll send it to you.
All right, thank you.
Welcome. John Kennedy, before anybody else raises their hand. Obviously, our friend in Australia does not have a question, so he's not going to walk us off. It's your turn, kiddo.
Okay, well, it's breakfast time for you, so we've got to get you fed and everything. I want to thank our presenters today, last week's presenters at our Linux with our backing up, and the week before with our backing up. I hope this has been helpful, and hopefully in the future when the videos are posted, you'll share them with your group, because as we keep saying, you're going to lose your data sometime.